So many games use hell so flippantly, including the iconic hell game, Doom. Other games treat hell like a biome of brutes and brimstone. Some fire pillars there, a lava lake over there. They all treat hell as a one-dimensional place. Metal Hellsinger treats hell as its own dimension. Hellsinger's version of the Damned Nation feels like a world. There are different climates, architecture, civilizations, and atmospheres. There are the mysterious chills up in the Sierra of Voke that contrast nicely with the glowing rage of the demons that seek your slaughter. The heavy metal infrastructure of Acheron with much more chaotic and ruined design that implies somehow the human world is or was consumed by the blazes below. The crimson glow of Stygia that implies this place is somehow eviler than those following it, as though this area is somehow closer to the core of hell. Hellsinger understands that hell isn't just some nightmare with the lost souls of the damned scrounging around its jagged, incendiary cliffs. Hell is its own dimension, with different countries, kings, and architecture. Hellsinger goes out of its way to defy the standard tropes of a burning hell, and gives us a diverse hell. Of course, it still has sections that are those played out tropes, but Hellsinger uses this to contrast the general perception of hell with all the new biomes that the developers incorporated into Purgatory, making even the most basic of levels stand out in the context of the game. The art style of Hellsinger is a lot cleaner than I expected it to be. It's not as messy as you'd think hell would be, covered in gore and bone and all that. But the arenas almost shine. There's such care and reverence in both the creation of them and how the in-game demons preserve them. It's odd to think of demons as sentimental, but this hell is incredibly well kept together. If I did have one little complaint about the levels, it would be that there are 8 of them when you could have had 9, and then styled the menus after the 9 rings of hell. But that's a bit expensive for something that wouldn't matter all that much, but hey, there's always DLC. In a rare instance, I want to praise something the developers didn't do: platforming. It's so tempting to make the player do jumps and dodges timed to the beat, and while it could have been cathartic, messing up the jumps would have been a total pace killer for the game, which is something that would totally ruin this one in particular, which makes me wonder why they thought it would be a good idea for a shield enemy, but that's for a gameplay review to discuss. From a level design viewpoint, the arenas don't stand out all that much. Sure, they're all very different in terms of layout, but at the end of the day, it just feels like a low-ground arena with an upper level most of the time. The fact that most of them are symmetrical doesn't help them all that much, in contrast to Doom Eternal's arenas, which had jungle gyms, grapple points, jump pads, interactable kills, and so on. Hellsinger feels incredibly tame. Or that's what I would criticize if Hellsinger weren't also a rhythm game, which would be one of its greatest strengths for a gameplay review, but it's a massive detriment for a world review. My biggest criticism of Hellsinger's world is that you hardly ever look at it. So much of your concentration for Hellsinger is keeping on time with the beat that the game totally absorbs you into its rhythm. So much, in fact, that the world around you begins to fade away as your focus begins to narrow in on the UI. In trying to stay on the beat with your gunshots, you literally don't have the capacity to see the world around you. This is why all the enemies have a very distinct outline and colour scheme, otherwise it would be impossible to know what you're fighting. It's so odd because the developers put a lot of time into making this incarnation of Hades visually distinct. Still, you won't have much time to absorb it. Sure, you can use your ears to try and stay on the beat, but when you whiff a shot you need to look back at the UI in order to recalibrate your systems. Plus, it's more effective to use your ears and eyes to try and keep up with the rhythm. If you want to get good at the game, filtering out the world around you and only perceiving the minimal amount of information you need is a valid strategy. Even though the rhythm is the most essential part of Hellsinger's design, it doesn't mean I can't find a way to praise it through the animations. The recoil and reloading of the weapons are perfect down to the nanosecond, with a small audio cue that incorporates itself into the beat, helping the player form their own rhythm along whichever notes they choose to follow. Hellsinger's tracks aren't written for the player to hit every note perfectly, they have been written for the player to hit every second note. That intermediate note is designed for an animation, be it the cocking of your weapon, a quick reload, or a dodge. The songs in Hellsinger are written in such a way that no matter what pattern of notes you move to, you're always using every note to its full extent. Speaking of the tracks, since the music of a game falls under its aesthetics, it belongs in a world review. Much like Devil May Cry, the music of Hellsinger is the reward for doing well in the game. The music is directly tied to success, making it even more gratifying as the knobs crank up. The best thing I can say about Hellsinger's tracks is how well they encapsulate the intensity of any given situation. The dynamism of how well you time your shots ties into how screeching the song is, and the way the song builds along with your performance is an absolute fantastic gameplay integration. It's oftentimes against a boss or particular powerhouse enemy where you'll be hitting most of your shots, as you won't have to look for a new target, and as you find your rhythm, the song crescendos along with you, until that fervid moment where both you and the track climax, the vocals kick in, and euphoria is achieved. Metal Hellsinger is a game that understands Hell to be more than a generic setting for evil, and fully realizes it as its own dimension with unique culture and climates to match. It's unfortunate that the style of gameplay that Hellsinger has means that most players will barely be able to look at the world to begin with, but that's a double-edged sword, as without the beat, Hellsinger would be booed off stage as a first-person shooter. The music of Hellsinger is where the truly outstanding parts of its aesthetic shine brightest, managing to be immensely entertaining to listen to, as well as serve the gameplay flawlessly well, and echoes out into the nights of the Nether.